The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
We are now about to witness the truth.
it's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Tuesday, July 12th, 2016. Thank you for joining us. You could have been anywhere in the world today, but you decided, yeah, I say that every night, but I mean it. For real. No, I mean it. I'm glad to have you guys here. And I know tonight, of all nights, above any other night, a lot of my supporters probably have a lot on their mind that they want to say. So I have a lot that I want to discuss. I will be joined by Tim Canova. He is running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I believe in, I definitely know it's in South Florida in the Davie district. I have the number right here somewhere in front of me. But Tim Canova is joining me shortly. Excited about that interview. And before we have that interview, I want to talk to you. Of course, you know what today is. I knew today was coming. And I wanted you to be sure, like, we knew this was coming. We knew Bernie Sanders was going to endorse Hillary Clinton, and I wanted to be sober. I wanted to always make sure I tell you the truth, even if it's a truth that's not pleasant. But Bernie Sanders endorsed Hillary Clinton today, and not only was it an endorsement, but it was a full-throated endorsement. I mean, he could have just gotten up there and said, I endorse Hillary Clinton, and left it at that. But he went item by item by item outlining why he supports Hillary Clinton. So we want to unpack that a little bit. And we want to give you a chance to chime in. Tell us how you're feeling. 857-600-0518. Also, there's some headlines that we need to discuss. Some things happening in the South China Sea that I definitely want to discuss. Jamal Green out of Chicago, a young protester, Black Lives Matter, and also a supporter of Bernie Sanders. I mean, he endorsed Bernie Sanders and spoke at some Bernie Sanders rallies. Jamal Green, some of you may know him, may not. I'll show you a picture of him and some video of him. But he was arrested over the weekend and hit with a $350,000 bond. I have to talk about it, number one, because I believe in that young man, and I followed his work long enough to trust that everything that they're saying is not what it is. But then number two, I really want to deal with the reality that when the system is actually afraid of you, they know how to get rid of you. And I think that's what's happening there in Chicago. And I'll show you why. He has been, Jamal Green was one of the most outspoken people against Rahm Emanuel. So we'll talk about him shortly as well. But first, I want to thank at the top of the show, I want to thank our patrons, because we absolutely cannot do this without you. There's just no way that the Benjamin Dixon Show would exist. And definitely we would not exist in these fabulous studios that we are in without you. So thanks you to all of our patrons and all of our newest patrons that signed up overnight. I just want to take a moment to thank you. Because of you, we're able to do this. As you can obviously tell, I'm filibustering until I can get to my list. And thank Marcus P. Marcus, thank you so much for your pledge, my brother. Elena S., as if I didn't already give it away. Thank you so much for your pledge. We couldn't do it without you, and we really appreciate you. Now, what everyone wants to talk about, and I know you do, I have 1,000,001 things to talk about in terms of Bernie Sanders and his endorsement. I want to know what you think. The big thing I can't answer that I want your opinion on tonight is why. Why do you think Bernie Sanders did this endorsement now? I have plenty of things to encourage you about, and I know a lot of people have lost, you've lost your shit. A lot of people are upset, and I understand. Some have gone off the deep end. I don't really understand that, but I respect however it is you feel. I don't really feel sad today. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't feel sad at all. And I'll tell you why, but not right now. Right now, I want to talk to you. You tell me what's going on. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Yes, hello?
Yep, this is you. You're live. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Yes, hello. This is Jared from Downingtown, PA.
How's it going, man?
And pretty good, except for, well, actually horrible. Bernie Sanders recently endorsed Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
And to get my perspective of it, I donated about $300 to Bernie Sanders' campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel cheated right now. I really do. I mean, this is supposed to be the political revolution. He was supposed to win.
Mm-hmm.
He was supposed to change everything. He was supposed to veto TPP.
Yeah.
And now we got Hillary, who is, well, a war criminal. I mean, what more can we say? I mean, she's a war criminal. And we have to be very frank about it. I mean, she's killed thousands of people with her policies worldwide. And yet nobody in the media is saying it. Nobody outside the corporate media is saying it.
Mm.
And it's a shame, really. It really is. I mean, the endorsement was just, you could tell that Bernie Sanders, he was just like, he looked like he was, drinking glass or something during the whole thing. It was really sad to see. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. I heard that from a lot of people. Actually, Mary, one of the producers for the show, she went, and she could tell that it was kind of difficult for him to actually say the words that he said. And there's even a meme, right? There's this. Okay, guys, there's a debate over how do you say GIF or GIF. I say GIF, right? So if you say GIF, don't bother me about it. But there's a GIF. No, I said GIF. There's a GIF going around of Bernie Sanders sweating, wiping the sweat off his brow because it was that difficult, right? It was that difficult for him to actually commit to this endorsement. I can tell it's hard, right? I can tell it was difficult, but he was so full-throated. Like he didn't just say, I endorse Hillary Clinton. He went all out, right? He went all out for Hillary Clinton. So even though it might have been difficult for him, he went all the way in. But what's interesting about what you said, the last caller said, is that you feel like the revolution, like you've been betrayed, like you gave all this money for the revolution and you've been betrayed. I have a whole lot to say about that, but I'm going to keep it to myself right now. I just want to hear you guys, right? I want to give you a space to voice how you're feeling and let you know that I respect how you feel, even though I don't feel the same in a lot of regards, but it's not about me right now. I just want to hear what you think. What do you feel? Tell me what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question? Scotty, how you feeling, man?
I'm all right. Like I said before in your program, I am not a Sanders supporter. I do think that he, in a sense, did play the role of sheepdog, but I'm not going to sit back and, like others, and not act like his candidacy didn't raise a lot of hope for the left and didn't actually open the window to possibilities that weren't there before.
Interesting.
And
yeah.
You know what? And this is where I do differ from Black Agenda Report and Counterpunch, like outfits like that, where instead of building on the momentum of the Sanders campaign, they basically trashed him and his supporters. And it's like, I understand that you're taking the principal position, but it comes to a point where you got to see what's right in front of you.
Yeah.
I mean, how long are you going to keep telling people to get involved in activism? Oh, and by the way, another thing is you can vote for the Green Party. The Green Party hasn't been involved in these communities that well. So, and it's like, it's bad enough they're getting it from the Hillary supporters and the media that they're being treated like shit, but when they're being heard by respected people on the left, that hurts.
But you know what? What's interesting, Scotty, is that you prefaced all this by saying that you weren't a Bernie Sanders supporter, but I just heard you give one of the best arguments in support of the success of his campaign, despite the fact that he just conceded. I mean, you said a mouthful, but you weren't a Bernie Sanders supporter. Unpack that a little bit for me real quick.
Yeah. It's like I said, I do think that his role was to liberals from leaving the Democratic Party. The problem, though, is that, and this is the same thing I saw with Occupy Wall Street, where instead of taking the momentum of Occupy Wall Street, they criticize them for not having demands. Well, in case you're wondering about the stuff that's going on right now in Baton Rouge and Minnesota, power doesn't give a damn about your demands. So, you can just take that and take the opportunity that you have and just use it.
Yeah. Appreciate the call, man.
Shout out to the Sanders supporters. Just if you want to vote for Jill Stein, if you wanted to sit home, hey, I'm not going to judge you.
Yeah. Most definitely. Thanks for the call, man. We always appreciate your input. 857-600-0518. Yeah, I mean, this is a judgment-free zone. I'm not going to only people, and I'm going to be real. Okay, the only group of Bernie Sanders supporters that I will give hell, and you can never listen to my show again, and you can unfollow me from Twitter and do all those things and unsubscribe from YouTube. The only people I'm going to give hell are those who are just outright saying that Donald Trump is an alternative to Bernie Sanders. I mean, if you want to never vote for Hillary, you're not going to get a complaint out of me. I'm not going to say nothing but vote your conscience. If you're going to vote for Jill Stein, I'm going to say vote your conscience. If you're going to vote for who hell, I know not Gary Johnson, but maybe Gary Johnson. I don't know. The jury's out on Gary Johnson. But if you just feel like you just can't vote and you have to protest and say, I'm not going to vote, I'm usually the last person to say, do not vote. But I'm at a different stage right now. Right now, I'm at the stage where you have to do what's going to be best for you, because you're the one that's going to have to live with this decision for the next 4 years. So if you're going to vote for Jill Stein, you're going to stay at home, or you're going to go out and vote for like Gary Johnson, or some of you might even vote for Hillary. I get it. But one thing I don't get is saying that you're going to support Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is the antithesis of what Bernie Sanders stands for. Yes, they have similarities in populism, but not all populism is the same, right? There is the anti-establishment fervor, but not all anti-establishment is the same, right? Not to call Trump a Hitler, but Hitler was a populist. And I don't think anyone is going to say, well, shit, just because he's a populist means that I can identify with him. No, right? There's a difference between your type of populism. There's nationalistic populism, right? There's Trump. Those are the only people but according to some polling, right? And the source is coming from 538, 538 blog, the folks that I just called assholes on Twitter. But they have some pretty good data here. So according to the average of polls between NBC, the Wall Street Journal poll, Pew Research Center, and the Suffolk University poll. So with a third party run, they're polling Bernie Sanders supporters. With the third party run, Hillary Clinton only gets 64% of Bernie Sanders supporters. Donald Trump gets 7% of Bernie Sanders supporters. Without a third party run, just in a heads up match against Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, Clinton gets 79% of Bernie Sanders supporters, and Donald Trump gets 9% of Bernie Sanders supporters. So there are a few Bernie Sanders supporters out there who see Donald Trump as an option. Free country, you do what you want to do, but this is not the do call in. I'll treat you with respect, but I'm definitely going to have to push back on that, because it makes absolutely zero sense to me, other than the fact that you're upset, right? But Donald Trump to me doesn't seem like an option. Vote for Jill Stein. I mean, for God's sake, if you want somebody closely aligned to your beliefs, vote for Jill Stein, but never Donald Trump. But the interesting thing about these polls, this was what is disappointing about these polls, was the fact that they polled, and the third party candidate that they polled for was Gary Johnson, not Jill Stein, which is amazing, because I'm like, if you're going to ask Bernie Sanders supporters about any third party candidate, you should be asking them about Jill Stein, right? If you want to actually see the results and how effective her campaign could be at pulling off Bernie Sanders supporters, which she didn't hesitate. She didn't waste any time today, coming out 100% after Bernie Sanders supporters, which I get. That's the game plan. She always, in my opinion, the Green Party always benefits off of disaffected liberals and progressives. So that's their game plan, and they're going full-throated. And, again, you can call in here and tell me anything about how you're feeling. I want to hear it. I am all open for it. Just don't tell me you're voting for Donald Trump. Unless this caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, I'm Sean from Seattle.
Sean, what's going on, man?
Nothing. I'm voting for Donald Trump. Just joking.
I appreciate. I was hoping you would say that so we could have a good debate. But go ahead. How you feeling, man? How you feeling after this endorsement?
No. I'm kind of confused. A coworker of mine who's a big Hillary supporter, I was definitely Bernie Sanders, and she came to me today and she was like, "How are you feeling?" I was like, "About what?" She was like, "The endorsement." I was like, "Yeah, he kind of said he would do that months and months ago."
Yep.
I think people are losing perspective, though. The whole idea was, yeah, we wanted the presidency. Yeah, that would have been absolutely 100% great. But this movement that he has started is something nobody has ever seen before. I've even signed up to run for political office. I just think people, they had themselves kind of like in horse blinders, and they just really wanted to just see that White House, and that was it. But, like, seriously, it was a long shot from the beginning that he would get there.
Yep.
But the point is that he said the whole time, this is not about the presidency. This is about the American people taking back their government, in which we did. We didn't get everything we wanted, i.e. Hillary Clinton, but it's like Anoa said in the chat, we can push Hillary a whole lot easier than we can push a Trump.
That's
now,
right.
A couple of months ago, I would have said differently. I would have said we probably could have gotten more out of a Trump presidency because typically, the left gets more out of a conservative president than anything. But Trump supporters are enough to put up whatever brick wall that we could get against that.
Yeah.
So, okay, we get Hillary in there. We can push her a little bit to the left, but the issue is that we need to pack this Congress and the Senate so she has no choice but to go left. And I wanted to ask, I wanted to comment on your Gary Johnson thing. I think Gary Johnson, I might be a conspiracy theory, I think he's a bait and switch. I think he gives Reds a conscientious vote like Jill Stein gives the left. I think they can kind of go in there, vote for him, and not feel like they have to go take a Silkwood shower afterwards or something.
I hear that.
But I'm because I'm in Washington, I have the liberty of voting my conscience.
Me too.
It would probably be a whole lot harder if I was in a swing state, but I'm in Washington. I might even vote for the Workers' Party. They got a black ticket, so I'm excited about that.
Hey, man, I appreciate the call, man. And I'm in Massachusetts, as you guys know, so I have the privilege. I'm privileged enough to be able to vote my conscience. Thanks for the call, dude. I'm going to ring up one of my friends on Twitter. He is. I think we see eye to eye on a lot of things, and he's obviously a Bernie Sanders supporter. He has had a lot to say during this election. Aaron Bowersock, he has a large following on Twitter and very influential because of the words that he says. I like to retweet his stuff all the time. Aaron, how's it going, man? Thanks so much for joining me tonight. How are you doing after this decision?
Well, at first it was, real tough to swallow. You put in 15 months of work on this thing, donations, volunteering, phone calls, all that stuff. And to see it all, I know it's not ended until the convention, but to see it all go down like that, them standing on the stage, it was, it was a punch to the gut for sure.
Yeah. So what do you feel? Do you feel betrayed? I've heard a lot of people say, I've heard everything today. Like, I've heard people say they feel betrayed. I've heard people say that Sanders is a sellout, and, what do you think?
No. And actually somebody on BuzzFeed wrote up this listicle, right? Like, 27 people who are pissed at Bernie Sanders today. And they put me on that list. And I tweeted at them, I commented, I'm like, no. do not put me on that list. I'm not pissed at Bernie Sanders. I mean, look at what we've done in these 15 months. We started with nothing. I'm sure a lot of people have seen those the pictures where, I know behind me I got photos, but behind Bernie in his very first campaign stops, it was like his poster duct taped to the wall. And you know, I came and saw him here twice in Seattle, and what we've been able to do, we've been able to show that you don't need corporate backing to really compete at the national level. That was the Democrats' argument for decades. It's like, oh, well, we don't want unilateral disarmament because then the Republicans are going to keep winning. But now we've proven that that is not the case. We've proven that when we when we stand together, there's a lot that we can accomplish. For now, we haven't accomplished it all, but we're getting there. So as far as being pissed about Bernie, no. We're all in a really bad situation right now, and who knows how legitimate. I'm one of those people who think the elections weren't all 100% legitimate.
Yeah.
But even with Bernie out, me personally, I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of friends out here, and I know we're going to move forward. Our star player might be on the bench, but we're going to have to look for new leaders.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. Like, one of the biggest things I know for sure is, like, I was voting age. I'm probably older than a lot of the Bernie Sanders audience. I was voting age in 2000. I voted for Al Gore, and I saw what a progressive movement looked like in Ralph Nader. And then I saw what we thought was a progressive movement with Barack Obama. Love you, Obama, but you're not progressive. I'll tell you to your face. But, you know, truth of the matter is, I have not seen in my adult lifetime or in my lifetime period an organized progressive movement like Bernie Sanders has left us. And to me, that's something to, you know, if nothing else, you could be mad at and hurt today, but I don't think we could so easily dismiss this movement that he built and left us with.
I think that's you touched on Bernie Sanders, this movement, this campaign, doing something that no other progressive campaign has done, and through the most part, we've all stuck to our guns on, you know, not accepting the corporate stuff, on continuing the pressure on the media. But I think the biggest strength that we all had was social media. We all became our own media. I mean, look at the success that you've had, the success that other progressive media personalities have had. And that in itself is kind of a double-edged sword because, all the people are on today like, oh, Bernie betrayed us. Oh, it too, Bernie, and all that. But that's a instant reaction. That's a gut reaction. Where we don't sleep on things anymore. We don't take 5 seconds to think about things. We just get on there and say, oh, I don't like it. But that's the same thing that powered all the debates. It's the same thing that powered huge donation drives. All through social media. So
you got to take the good with the bad. Yeah. You definitely have to take the good with the bad. And you're right. I see what you mean. It's that double-edged sword where you have to give people that's where they wear their hearts on their sleeves. It's public, right? It's very open and visceral. And I think it speaks to the human condition, not to get philosophical, but it requires us to respect people's feelings and to give them space to vent and not hold it against them that they are, calling Sanders a sellout or even would never speak of Sanders ever again. Respect that. But then at the same time, like, we have a movement here. We have something that we can galvanize over the next. So let me ask you this, because I'm getting ready to speak with Tim Canova, who's running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. He's up next. But what do you think is next? What would you like to see happen next with the progressive movement?
Okay. Yeah, this was so that's the big question right now. Now that we did lose our star player, what are we going to do? And during this time, this happens every single time. This happened after March 15th. This happened after New York. Everyone is like, oh, what are we going to do? We're in an era of confusion and murkiness. So immediately, I think just calmer heads prevail. So hang on to whatever I can only speak for myself. I'm going to only hang on to the lessons that I personally learned over the course of this 15 months. For me, that was that democracy is a personal choice and responsibility, and it's a lifelong commitment. And it's something that you need to participate in locally and nationally. So while we're waiting for leaders to emerge or anything like that to say, do this, do that, I think we should all step back, think about what we learned over the past 15 months, how Bernie inspired us. Because just because Bernie might not be the leader anymore doesn't mean that he's taken our ideals out of our hearts.
Right.
Those are ours. So for everyone like scrambling to figure out what to do, just look inside yourself. What does this political revolution mean to you? What are your ideals? Know that you can fight for those ideals and people will join you. That's what we've proven over the past 15 months.
Absolutely. Aaron, hey man, I thank you so much for joining me at the last second. I think you hit on the main thing. It's like, it's inside of us to keep going. Tell everyone how to get up with you.
Oh, well, you can find me on Twitter. That's A Bowersock. That's a really tough name to spell. Yeah, I'm the only Aaron Bowersock pretty much in America. There's not many of us. It's a rare last name. Or abowersock.com. Benjamin, thank you so much for having me on here. You guys are always excellent for hearing some great discussion.
Hey, man, thanks so much. Well, I appreciate that. And we'll definitely have you back on soon.
Oh, so much.
Awesome. 857-600-0518. In a moment, I'll be joined by Tim Canova, candidate for Congress, and we'll be talking about his campaign as well as what's next. You know, people are looking for leadership, and one of the things that, and I'll talk about this in a minute. Before the end of the show, but I think we have to start looking at ourselves for that leadership. And the reason I say that is because Bernie Sanders showed us the model. He showed us that it could be done. And he also showed us the need and kept trying to point us to the fact that we need people to run for office on the local level and on the school board level, on the state level, and then even for Congress. You know, we need those type of people. And there's plenty of room for progressives to get out there and run. And that is the inevitable next part. So I really like what Aaron was saying, that it's really incumbent upon us to maintain those ideals. All right, so I'm super excited tonight. I've been trying to get in touch with this candidate for a long time, mainly because I lived in his district, the 23rd District of Florida. I lived down in Davie, Florida, right around the corner from Nova University, where Tim Canova, I believe, was a law professor. So I'm excited to have Tim Canova with me tonight. Tim, how are you this evening?
Very fine. Thank you, Benjamin. Appreciate being with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Listen, it's a big day, and I know you have a very important campaign, and I honestly think that your campaign now means a lot more to a lot of people because of what it symbolizes. You are running against the former DNC chairwoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and she has become kind of like the flashpoint, and she's become like this emblem of the establishment that many Bernie Sanders supporters are opposing. And on a day like today, where Bernie Sanders has conceded and endorsed Hillary Clinton, what do you think that means for your race? And what would you say to those disillusioned Bernie Sanders supporters?
Well, first of all, I'll point out that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is not actually the former DNC chair yet. I know that there have been some stories that her hands have been taken off the controls of the DNC and that she's just the head in title only. Who knows? The fact is she still is the head of the DNC. She's been a lousy DNC chair, and she needs to be removed not just from the DNC, but she really needs to be removed from office. She's been a very ineffective congresswoman. In the course of just the last few weeks, it's unbelievable what we have uncovered. Last year, she had the highest absentee record of anyone in the Florida congressional delegation except Marco Rubio. And she introduced all of 5 bills last year and not a single hearing from a single bill. And that's a side note. I mean, she's been taking millions of dollars in campaign contributions from the largest corporations and Wall Street banks, and she's been voting for their interests over the interests of South Florida residents. That's why I got into the race. Now, you're absolutely right. On a day like today, where Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the presidential race effectively, I do think that the race that we have here in South Florida takes on a much more of a center stage, you can say. People have always known it's an important race. If we could beat an incumbent like this, who's so well funded by the biggest corporations, it really puts incumbents all over the country on notice that there's a political movement afoot, that progressives have had it, and that it's time for change. And the model for change is a grassroots kind of a campaign where the fundraising comes from the grassroots and the campaigning itself is done at the local level, at the grassroots level.
That's one of the reasons I've been excited about your campaign. You mentioned some of the issues there in South Florida. One of the issues I know about, because you cannot drive around South Florida, Davie in particular, and not run into a check cashing store. And you see the exorbitant interest rates. I mean, sometimes it's like an interest rate of 350% that a person is charged on a payday loan. And the check cashing store is usually where people go to get payday loans. This was a former life, so I know about it. But it's really a major issue there. And then to see some of the things that Debbie Wasserman Schultz had said in support of that industry and some of the money that she gets. Speak to that issue in your community and what it means to your constituents and on a national level.
Well, this is a large district I'm in. It's all the way from Weston on the west side, which is a very affluent area, to east along the coast, Hollywood and Dania Beach and Hallandale. These are much lower income areas. And all over Florida, you see payday loan companies and check cashing companies. And in large part, the abuses, as you said, over 300% interest rates, a cycle of debt, a debt trap that folks get caught in. A lot of this is because of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. When she was, before she was a congresswoman, she was a member of the Florida legislature, and she helped craft Florida's payday lending law, which has been denounced by all kinds of civil rights and consumer protection groups all over the state of Florida. I've called her out on it. She actually was pushing a Republican bill earlier this year in Congress, which would prevent President Obama's Consumer Financial Protection Bureau from regulating payday lenders. And her response was, well, if these low-income folks don't have payday lenders to go to, they're going to have to go to loan sharks. And this is really a false choice. A loan shark might break their kneecaps, but the payday lenders just, automatically debit their accounts. They foreclose on their properties. They essentially put liens on their property. They make people homeless and on the street. And to say that there's no other progressive alternative is such a trope. It really comes from Wall Street. You can take a look at what Elizabeth Warren has been pushing and what I've been advocating as a law professor for years. Reinvigorate the postal system. This country from 1911, I think, until 1967, essentially from Teddy Roosevelt to John Kennedy just about, the postal system was a vibrant banking system. It had checking accounts for low-income folks. And, now if somebody can't afford to get a checking account at a private bank, they've got to go to a check cashing store. They've got to pay over 10% of their check to the company just to get it the check cashed. It's outrageous.
And I know that issue. Go ahead.
If I may just say, Debbie has taken $68,000, I believe, from the payday lending industry over the last few years, and it goes even beyond that $68,000. You take a look, who is funding the payday lenders? Who is giving them a line of credit? It's the big Wall Street banks. Absolutely. And Debbie has been taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from those big Wall Street banks.
Absolutely, man. And listen, it's I've done plenty of research on this industry and how it is intentionally designed, along with some policies by banks, to find ways of capitalizing on poor people. I mean, that's what this industry is for. And so what you're doing down there in that campaign is so significant and so important. I want to ask you about a different dynamic, though. You're running against an incumbent. You're running against a Democrat. And one thing that we have unfortunately shifted to in this political era is where we are so beholden to people who are in office that we really kind of brush aside or try to suppress anyone who's challenging an incumbent. Tell us about some of the pushback that you've gotten in comparison to the support that you've gotten, and what would you say to other people who have an incumbent in a seat that needs to be vacated because they don't represent our progressive values?
Yeah. Well, we have gotten pushback from the beginning, and it's from the establishment. right from the top. The Florida State Democratic Party tried to cut us off access to the voter database, exactly what Debbie Wasserman Schultz and her DNC tried to do to Bernie Sanders last December. And, any kind of establishment organization or leadership of establishment entities, they have pushed back and they favor Wasserman Schultz. So we see a number of unions that have endorsed her without ever screening us, a number of Democratic caucuses around the state that have endorsed her without ever screening. So, how democratic are those processes? Every endorsement that we've gotten, that my campaign has gotten, Communication Workers of America, the National Nurses United, a couple of local unions, the Transport Workers Union and a Pipe Fitters Union, and there's more lined up. All of those endorsements have been fair, open processes where the candidates get an opportunity to speak, to get screened on questionnaires, not with Wasserman Schultz. So the cards have been stacked against us, but I'll tell you, I never thought we were going to win this race by getting the votes of the establishment. The grassroots has come alive here. Our name recognition, our popularity, our message is resonating. That's what it really is. And one issue that's just come alive in the past few weeks, sadly, is the environment. It's been a national news story that the filthy water from Lake Okeechobee has been coming right through the St. Lucie River down to the Atlantic Ocean with a sludge, a blue-green algae tide that is killing any sea life in its path. And a couple of weeks ago, my campaign went up to Stewart, 2 hours north of here, to inspect this toxic sludge. It was nauseating and completely avoidable. And a lot of it is the big agriculture and the big sugar farms surrounding Lake Okeechobee. They pump for decades fertilizers, phosphates, nitrates into the lake, and it would normally, you'd say, it would filtrate through the Everglades themselves. Right. But the water has been diverted. The south shore of Lake Okeechobee is filled with sugar plantations, which stops the natural flow of water. Because of that, the Everglades and Florida Bay have not been replenished, and South Florida's aquifer here, the drinking water of millions of South Floridians, is now endangered. It's becoming more salinated, you could say. And there are solutions that have been offered. The former governor, Charlie Crist, had reached a deal where the state would exercise eminent domain, take the sugar plantations, pay for them $1 billion, and then convert it to marshland so that we could renew the natural flow of Lake Okeechobee into the Everglades. But Governor Rick Scott, the Republican, has stopped it from happening. And I should say Debbie Wasserman Schultz has been taking a lot of money. Her largest single contributor was the sugar companies. She takes even more money in aggregate from big agriculture companies. And she's done nothing to help the situation. She's been completely silent on this. She talks about how her seniority in Congress should help South Floridians. Well, she's never used it to get an appropriation to solve this problem, to buy up the sugar plantations. And in fact, her voting record is just abysmal. The highest absentee rate of any congressman, anyone in the Florida delegation, save Marco Rubio, and having introduced only 5 bills last year that have gone nowhere. It's really a terrible record.
So let's talk about that a little bit more then. Let's unpack that. Well, actually, from this perspective, you haven't been given an opportunity to debate Debbie Wasserman Schultz at this point. And is there a debate in the works? What does that look like? Because there's some issues that you guys really disagree on in a significant fashion. And I think all eyes would be on this debate.
I agree with you. And, a number of reporters, TV hosts, radio hosts have now extended debate invitations to both Debbie Wasserman Schultz and myself. I've accepted every single one. She's ignored every single one. She hasn't even rejected them. She just ignores them like she can't be bothered responding. The 2 local papers here, the Sun Sentinel has their editorial board has said that they're not ready to endorse anyone. They want to see debates. There was a major op-ed in the Miami Herald by Michael Putney, the dean of TV broadcast, political broadcast journalism here, calling for a debate. And she just dodges it. She dodges the debates all the time. And you mentioned I'm a law professor. I'm currently a law professor at Nova Southeastern University. I've been teaching at the law school level for 2 decades now. And, for 20 years, I've been debating folks a lot smarter than me on a regular basis. I don't think Debbie Wasserman Schultz has ever debated anyone in her congressional career, and I think she's afraid of debates. She should be afraid of debates. She cannot defend her record. She has been swimming in corporate money, and she has been shilling for them and ignoring the interests of South Floridians.
Oh, Tim, I absolutely love that. I thought you were getting ready to say, I don't think Debbie Wasserman Schultz wants to debate me. I was hoping you would say that because we would take that soundbite and send that everywhere. But I'll say it. I don't think she wants to debate you. And I think the residents and the constituents of the 23rd District of Florida deserve an opportunity to hear an alternative. So how do we get that debate? How do we make that happen?
Well, we now just launched TV ads. It's very exciting that we're now at this stage that we were able to launch some ads at the local level. And one of the ads is a montage of Debbie. At the beginning, she's talking about the importance of debates in a democracy for candidates to be able to get their message out. And the rest of the 60 seconds is a montage of clips of either media folks asking her questions or people from the general public asking her the same question. When will you debate Tim Canova? Will you ever debate Tim Canova? And she just turns, grimaces, walks away because Debbie Wasserman Schultz is afraid to debate me.
That's what we wanted to. That's what I wanted to hear. I'm going to be honest with you. It's really at the point. It's at the point where I think you have a lot more support today. And we were behind you. Like I've been, in your office knows I know you've been super busy. We've been trying to get up with you for at least like 5 months. So, we've had your back for some time. For me, it's because I'm from the district, right? And I know every issue that you just outlined. I know about the check cashing scams. I know about the environmental issues down there. And we'll talk about some police reform in a second. But I'm passionate about my home. That's my second home there now.
I had no idea. Benjamin, I had no idea you were from South Florida.
Oh yeah, no, and I have a couple of names that I'm gonna send you offline that I want you to reach out to if you don't already have them on your team for some really sharp people down there that can help you out. But here's where I want to go with the conversation here. If I can squeeze a few more minutes out of your time, let's talk about your police reform. Let's talk about, because the other issue that I was getting ready to list is the issue of Black Lives Matter. And South Florida is still Florida, and Florida is a very different place. And we know this is where the entire movement almost started with Sanford, Florida, not in your district, but close enough, with Trayvon Martin, and then more recently in Palm Beach Gardens. Again, that's outside of your district. For those listening, a friend of mine, Corey Jones, who was gunned down by an officer just recently this year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So sorry. I didn't know you were his friend.
Yeah, no, I knew Corey for about somewhere between 10 and 15 years. I never really went back and put a start date on our friendship. But what are your thoughts about the Black Lives Matter movement? What are your thoughts about police reform, and particularly as it pertains to your district?
Yeah, it's a problem in my district, and it's a problem all over South Florida. A few years ago, not many years ago, just 3 or 4, there was a couple of shootings in Miami where young black men were shot to death for painting graffiti onto a building. Yeah. Punishment has to fit the crime. And unfortunately, we've seen even no crime whatsoever. Even, graffiti is a crime against property, but it doesn't warrant execution. And now we see a lot of black folks in this country, and we see it more and more because of cell phone cameras are everywhere. So this obviously has been going on for years, but now there's documentation of what's been happening. And, young black men mostly being slain for no reason except they're black. So, I do agree. Black Lives Matter. We have to be doing something about this and not just tinkering. This society is suffering from racism, from an economic crisis that goes on forever. It's a combined, you could say. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about, the way racism and unrestrained capitalism and militarism were in combination, just a lethal combination. And I think you see this happening. And, let me try to unpack it a little bit. This is a big topic, and, where do you start and where do you finish? I'll say I've been against the war on drugs. And I mention that because the war on drugs becomes a pretext for this kind of police surveillance, especially of the African American community, but also Hispanics, Native Americans. If the police were to be doing the stop and frisk in white neighborhoods, like even wealthy white neighborhoods, Wall Street, Beverly Hills, of course, they'd be finding probably more drug possession in those neighborhoods than they find typically in an African American poor neighborhood.
Yeah.
But it becomes a pretext for this surveillance that is imposed in a very racially and ethnically discriminatory fashion. And we should stop the war on drugs. It's been going on way too long. It's not been effective. It's been an abysmal failure. And this is another big difference between myself and Wasserman Schultz. She hasn't even been able to come out in favor of medical marijuana. And this state had a referendum 2 years ago where medical marijuana fell short just by a little bit. It needed 60% of the vote to pass. It got 58%, I believe, and she was dead set against it. I've been for medical marijuana for years. I'm for decriminalizing it. Miami-Dade and Broward counties have both taken steps in the right direction by at least giving the police the discretion to issue summonses for the first 3 offenses for the possession of minor amounts of marijuana. The federal government should deschedule marijuana from its controlled substance list. It should allow the states to be the laboratories of change and of reform. And, I do applaud that the Democratic Party now has this in its platform. And, of course, that is thanks to the Bernie Sanders delegates. The federal government should be out of the business of criminalizing drug use. It should be seen as a public health problem. And this society really needs to be providing a vibrant job market for all of its citizens from the ground up, from the bottom up, so that folks don't even have any need to go into the drug trade just to make ends meet or because they don't see any other avenue in life that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
And at the same time, police departments need to be reformed. They have to more reflect the neighborhoods that they actually patrol. We need body cameras on police to record this stuff. The police departments have gotten very militarized at the same time that our society has, between video games and everything else, violent video games, that is. From very young age, Americans get very desensitized to violence, and we see an awful lot of violence on TV and from very young age. And, when law enforcement is patrolling in very difficult circumstances, they really are, but you get a lot of law enforcement folks who just are not properly trained, and many of them have racial biases. And these problems are pervasive, and not just to South Florida. Obviously, this is a nationwide problem, really every corner of this country.
Thank you for placing into the context of that conversation not only the criminal justice reforms, not only the police reforms, but also economic reforms that would help fix some of the problems that lead to crime in the first place. A lot of people like to conveniently discuss the racial component, but never discuss the economic component, which actually could alleviate much of the crime that we find in impoverished communities. So thank you so much for that. I want to ask you these last 2 questions, and they might intertwine. In 2011, you actually participated in the Occupy movement, and you got a chance to see firsthand the rise and the subsequent fall, relatively a fall for the Occupy movement. In light of what happened today, everyone is looking for leaders. Everyone is looking for someone to take the helm and take the charge of the progressive movement. But what would you say to all of the people who are disillusioned? What would you say to the people who are ready to throw in the towel for the progressive movement? What's next? What do we do from here?
We don't have a choice. We can't throw in the towel. What does that even look like, to throw in the towel? The progressive movement has been growing, and Occupy Wall Street was, and I was in Occupy Los Angeles, essentially teaching a workshop on the Federal Reserve and Wall Street. That was my involvement. And I was impressed with the encampment and the folks that I met in the encampment. These were folks who got hurt so badly by the 2008 financial collapse, but they didn't have the Federal Reserve and the federal government coming to their rescue. It's socialism for those at the top, for big Wall Street banks and hedge funds. They're the ones who get bailed out. Everyone else is living in a very tough environment where there's a lot of sharp elbows and there's not enough opportunity. And, what does it look like to give up on the progressive movement? Does it look like Donald Trump? I mean, because you get an awful lot of folks who are going over into that direction. And, you take a look at the Great Depression, you had Franklin Roosevelt and a progressive movement take hold, but you also had neo-Nazis in this country. I guess you wouldn't call them neo-Nazis, but there were brown shirt rallies in this country at the time that Roosevelt took office.
Yeah.
We can't just check out. This progressive movement has gotten a lot of momentum. It's heartbreaking that Bernie Sanders apparently has fallen short, but Bernie himself has talked about the importance of the down ballot races, and people have to step up. I never thought I was going to run for a political office. It's a lot of personal sacrifice to do something like this, but our campaign has grown because other people have stepped up in so many meaningful ways.
Yeah.
Thousands of people have contributed small amounts of money to this campaign that have added up and allowed us to run a real campaign. And people all over the country, if they're not donating small amounts of money, they're phone banking, they're knocking on doors, they're running for office. This is what has to be done. We have to take back our democracy. And, a day like today, people are heartbroken. Fine. We got to lick our wounds, wake up in the morning and get back to work and keep fighting. Because, it's not just the kind of world we're living in. It's the kind of world that the next 7 generations are going to face. Human beings cannot afford at this stage, with the range of problems we're facing, to just check out and say, well, it didn't work out, so it's somebody else's problem. I'm not going to play anymore.
Yeah. Tim Canova, candidate for Congress, 23rd District of Florida, running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Listen, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us and discuss all of these important topics. Go for it.
I'd like to thank you. I'd like to urge folks to go to timcanova.com, contribute small amounts or phone bank for us, spread the word through social media. We're in a very crucial stage in this campaign, 2 weeks before the absentee ballots go out in the mail, and a lot of folks here vote by absentee. 2 weeks before folks have to be registered Democrat to vote in an August 30th primary. This is the home stretch. This is the final stretch, and we need folks every day to step up and help us if we're going to win this race.
Absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth. I was just going to tell you to tell everyone how they can get up with you and how they can help you. But thanks so much. And you said it's timcanova.com. What's the correct domain?
Yes, that's right. That is it.
Awesome. Best of luck to you. I'll be talking with you offline and doing what I can to help you out because I believe in your campaign. And if any of my listeners believe in it, I'm sure they'll find a way to support you. So thanks so much, Tim.
Thank you, Benjamin. I really appreciate being with you. Thank you.
Awesome. 857-600-0518 is the number to call if you want to join the conversation. Really appreciate Professor Tim Canova. We could have called him that, right? Professor Canova, for joining us and discussing his campaign. Listen, folks, it'll be one hell of a consolation prize to get Debbie Wasserman Schultz out of office. I'll tell you, I'm just going to be honest with you, because at the end of the day, she was one of the number one reasons that Hillary Clinton got the baked in advantage that she got. So, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You support him or don't support him. You donate to whoever you want. I'm not trying to tell you where to go, but I would say this: if you want to see some change and get something out of this, that's the race that we should be focused on top of all the other races. And I like what he said. Same thing that Bernie has been saying. Same thing that Aaron Bowersock said. Same thing that I'm telling you. It's your participation at this point. Don't look for another leader. You are the leader that needs to step up and step in. So many other things we got to talk about tonight, but I just want to drive that home. I'm going to take this caller, and after this caller, I have to talk about Jamal Green out of Chicago. But caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Ben, it's Bryce.
Bryce, how's it going?
Doing good. Well, I understand everyone's frustration and everything. And obviously, Bernie you could tell he didn't want to have to do this, but he kind of was in a no-win situation. Mm-hmm. And also, not to mention that, the big purpose is to make sure Trump doesn't get in. So he kind of was in a rock and a hard place. But the thing is that we did get some change. We did get the $15. We did get some things changed. Still, some things I have to do. But the thing about if Hillary can win, and Bernie, as well as Elizabeth Warren, other progressives, if she has a lot of progressives around her, and if we continue to pressure, it's going to be hard for her to not follow through on some things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know. Actually,
Sorry.
I don't think it's going to be hard for her not to follow through on some things. To be honest with you, I think she's going to do whatever the hell she wants to do. She's gonna run to the right.
That too.
She's gonna triangulate like most DLC Democrats do. They triangulate. You know, I think she's going to do exactly what she wants to do and completely disregard the progressive movement, which to me means that we're still in the fight. I mean, we're the opposition. No matter what happens in November, progressivism is still in the opposition. Now, she could prove me wrong, Bryce. She could come out and be one of the most progressive candidates we've ever seen. I don't think that's going to happen.
I'm not saying.
Go ahead.
I'm not saying that it's going to happen or she's going to do that. I'm just saying on basis of the people that's surrounding her in terms of the progressive movement, we might be able to get some progressive things done that with her as president that, they will be able to, get done.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just thinking that it could happen because of people that's around her and the pressure that will put on where she might have no choice. She might be able to get at least 1 or 2, 3 things at least done possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's a strong possibility. And one last point, I was in tears watching you talk about Giuliani. Your facial expressions had me crying.
Hey man,
I felt it.
Hey man, that Giuliani, I mean, you shouldn't even brought him up, man, because that dude gets on my last nerves. Bryce, thanks so much for the call. But yeah, so there's so much that we have to do from here. And one of the main things that we have to do is so important to all the progressives that are listening. It's to not disengage, but to engage further and to engage in local movement politics, to get involved on a local level. And every time I think about getting involved on the local level, one of the first people I think about is Jamal Green out of Chicago. Pulling him up on my screen here. Jamal Green out of Chicago. This is a young brother who is not only involved in the Black Lives Matter movement, but he was actively involved in the Bernie Sanders movement, in the Feel the Burn. I mean, there's a video of him on YouTube right now you can go and watch where he speaks so passionately, not just about Bernie Sanders, but about progressivism, right? And about the things that we need to do. Like Tim Canova was saying, that it's not only a racial disparity thing that we have to address, we have to address the economic disparity. And this is what Jamal Green has been doing in Chicago. This past weekend, as he was leading 200 protesters in the Taste of Chicago protest, he was arrested. And he was arrested and given a $350,000 bail was set, meaning he had to raise $35,000, which is an obscene amount of money, right? This is somebody, you get that type of bail for someone who's arrested for a violent offense. And, he is a local activist, but he has had a national impact, particularly because of his fight against Rahm Emanuel. And without a doubt, listen, let me tell you something about the political spectrum, the political world. If they really fear you, they have ways of getting you off the scene. And Jamal has been taken off the scene, and they're going after him in a very significant way. And I'm talking about his case because he is a dynamic. When I tell you I'm a fan of this guy, I want you to watch this clip of him speaking on the issue of Rahm Emanuel in Chicago and Rahm Emanuel's participation in the suppression of the Laquan McDonald video. That is one of the more important stories of the last year, and Jamal Green was at the forefront. I want you to listen to this clip.
It starts with honesty. That's a good point, but Jamal, you are shaking your head in agreement. You think the mayor should step down? Definitely. You gotta look at it like this. This is the mayor's city. He is the CEO. If this is a corporation, he would be fired. You mean to tell me that the mayor, who's the CEO, the city council, who will be the board of directors, approved a $5 million settlement during the re-election campaign and not even seen the video? That does not say that we were wrong. That says that, we have to keep in power. if the stockholder, if this is a corporation, stockholders would have Rahm Emanuel's head for the job that he has been doing. And as residents of the city of Chicago, we are the stockholders. So we definitely are calling for new leadership and accountability. And that does not start, or that does not begin and end with a superintendent of police or a beat cop. It starts with the mayor, who is desperate to keep in power, and the city council who's doing his bidding to also stay in power. So definitely Rahm Emanuel has to go.
Bernard, your piece is
Now,
about cover
seriously,
up Chicago. Do you think that
seriously, this guy, I think he was 20 years old, maybe 22, between 20 and 22 years old, but dynamic, leading a political, economic, and racial revolution there in Chicago, and he's been taken off the scene. I'm going to keep pressing for Jamal, and I'm going to keep pressing until everyone who supports me on social media, everyone who supports any of the Black Lives Matter activists, this is a guy we need to get behind and help him out in every way we can. Because to me, he represents a legitimate political threat to the establishment. And I'm trying to parse my words very, very intentionally, not to say anything that I'm not prepared to say yet. But I'll simply say this: if the system really wants you and the system is really after you, they know how to get rid of you for the long run. And he has been arrested at a protest. There's video of it. They're making it sound like he reached for a police officer's gun. And we all know that if you're a black man, you don't reach for a police officer's gun, right? And you don't do this if your name and your reputation precedes yourself. His attorney has already said that this is just a punitive action. This is really trying to send a signal to, and this is me now, this is not the attorney, they're trying to send a signal to people who are really about that change, who are really about taking it to the system and demanding economic, political, racial justice change. And Jamal is about that. And I'm trying to parse my words carefully because I don't see the kind of support around a national figure like Jamal like there should be. And I'm going to leave it there for today. I'm going to leave it there because if I go any further, I'll say a whole lot of other things that I'm not ready to say. Give me about a week or so. I might have to say them anyway. But I fully expect anyone who says Black Lives Matter and anyone who has ever rallied and anyone who has ever benefited from Black Lives Matter, anyone who has ever benefited from the support of social media, you sure as hell better have your ass out there defending and fighting on behalf of Jamal Green. Again, that's all I'm going to say, because anything else, I'm going to say more than I want to say right now. All right. I had two other stories to cover. Again, I think I'll just have to cover them on individual clips. Folks, I thank you for joining us. Support the Benjamin Dixon Show. Go to the patreon.com/the BPD Show. Become a patron. Buy me a coffee, just a coffee a month. Buy me a little $5 coffee on a monthly basis. And if you really like what we're doing, I prefer scotch when I used to drink, but you can get me a shot for like $10 a month, right? We can't do this without you. We're trying to build this. We're trying to grow this. And thank you to all of my 100 supporters right now. 102 actually. 102 patrons who make this happen on a regular basis. Now listen, if you cannot donate a dime, and I understand, times get hard. If you can't donate a dime, then you can share our videos. You can you can subscribe to our blog, follow us on Spreaker, give us a review. Go to iTunes. One of the best things that you can do if you can't afford to support is to go to iTunes and give us a review. So do all those things. Help build the Progressive Army. We can't do this without you. And I will see you guys next time.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com facebook.com/the BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.